walls, heads to bees, more than gentle, here we go. Shot and far from the mic, bringing radio to life. Tune in weekly, it's a hand-filled ride. We got topics, get to tell the heart of five. It's the CQ calling, joining everyone. From Europe to the world, you know that we go. The frequency is set, let's start the show. It's the European Ham Radio Show. Come on, let's go!
And I know we're not going to use that intro, but I've spent so much time using it that I had to try it on one show.
Oh dear.
And we'll see what the audience thinks about that intro. Speaking about
do
that,
we still have any watchers? That's the question. No, I know you spent effort, but it's painful, I think.
I'm all about that 90s punk pop revival.
so
I don't mind as long as it's genuine, but this is artificial something resembling intelligence created. So
Yeah. And what we really should do is fork out a few bucks and send it to Walt's son, you know? Then we get a nice intro.
we could probably do that and and actually get a proper musician to make an intro for us. Nonetheless, welcome to the European Ham Radio Show. Two squares over there, we have Chris from radiostuff.com, and looking forward to hear about your antennas later on in the show. But let's start with the ham radio moment of the week. And Sean, what's your ham radio moment of the week?
Well, first off, there we go. Sorry for the background noise. It should be over in about a minute here. But the ham radio moment of the week, I guess, has been building antennas and doing some recording. So I've been working on the Delta Dude again. Basically, you got your 4-to-1 current bellin with a 1-to-1 choke built into it as well. So I should be able to have the full video on that later in the week released, and it'll show you how to deploy a Delta loop without a mast.
Without a mast?
Without a mast, that's right.
Okay,
And,
well, there's some trickery going on here.
There's no trickery. There's nothing magical about it, as some might say. The thing about it is the Army field manual that I was referring to today's video. It basically goes on to show you, like, if you don't have a mast, some things you could do to adapt. And quite frankly, what I'm doing is I'm throwing this heavy duty DX ultralight wire over a tree. My winder's so strong that even when I throw it over a tree, if it hits the ground, it's not a problem. So once I get it over the tree, I put it in its triangular configuration, and then I guess I'm going to show you real quick. Anyway, no, I can't. But then I use these right here. These are printed in nylon 230, and it holds the antenna wire here as I bring this down on an angle with 550 cord into the ground. Perfect triangular shaped masterpiece, if you will.
And Steve comments that your ham radio moment of the week has to be getting the seal of approval from Bob here.
That's a good one too. I got the first ever seal of approval, and it's a seal.
But awesome, Sean. I'm looking forward to seeing your Delta Loop videos. I also have the Delta Loop I built pretty much at the same time. We discussed a little bit back and forth on it. And mine's still in the car. I put it up once, and that's about it. So I need to take that out for an activation or something and actually use it.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, and I don't want to take up all the time, but it is really interesting because when I talk about a project 8 months ago or 6 months ago, it's like it's finally coming to light today. I mean, that just goes to show you how busy it can be here. But yeah, I'm really excited to show you, and hopefully you all enjoy.
Looking forward to it, and looking forward to that logo of yours without giving anything away. Kjetil, what's your ham radio moment of the week?
It's been very quiet. I've been sick, so I haven't been able to be outdoors doing a lot of radio. But I think maybe I got 2 badges in the mail from a viewer of the show. Yankee Oscar 3 Golf November uniform, GNU. Apparently a open source fan there. But at least thank you very much for those. That's really nice to get some fabric patches. I think I'll get them on my backpack. And other than that, been playing a bit more about with BP things and found out some Chinese store has ripped off my CE19 3D print and sell it on AliExpress, which is actually quite fun. That is good enough to sell there.
Yeah, and I guess there's no use in fighting that, though.
I
It's
don't care.
gonna stay- it's going to stay there nonetheless. And I see that Chris has been kind enough to give away one of his kits at the end of the stream. And today's keyword is radio stuff.
Nice.
So and I see there's a couple of people that have entered already. Anything else this week, Kjetil?
No, it's been quiet. So next week is better, I hope.
Yeah, next week, as always, there's always a hope that next week will be better. Tobias, what's your ham radio moment of the week?
Just the electronics moment of the week. Since I bored everybody to death with my 1 hour peak envelope circuit, I wired it up on Friday and gave it a test, and there's a part 2 video coming out in a few days, and that will be much shorter, so it's about only 5 minutes. So the build took ages, but the testing is quick. And apart from that, what I've been doing, I've been trying to refurbish an old X200 diamond antenna. So I got some polystyrol resin that they use for boat building, because it was out on the roof for 25 years, and when you grab it, you're basically grabbing the glass. So I thought I'd give it a nice fat coat with that boat coat, and maybe try to resurrect it from the dead. And of course, the cat walked in and walked over the plastic sheet where I had, the resin on the floor. So I had well, the cat had not a good ham radio moment of the week. I had to basically get the hardening resin out of the fur and basically had to shave her front paw. So she really hated me for that. But that's how it goes. Yeah. And unfortunately, third moment, Amazon Prime Days did it to me. I got the nasty UVK 5, I think. Yeah. And I'm also getting the add-on circuit that you can get from AliExpress to make it to upgrade it to SSB reception, or good quality SSB reception. So you've now done it, guys. You dragged me into the abyss of AliExpress.
and I just got to say though, that radio is not necessarily a good radio, but it's a fun platform for experimenting.
I mean, for $25, ripping it apart and soldering it, I'd rather do that with that one than with the THD 75.
Yeah, and I see that Butado here says he's going to buy one of those or an M13. I don't know what an M13 is. Does any of you guys know?
Isn't that an automatic rifle?
No, isn't it? Isn't an M13 one of those Chinese-made vertical
radios?
I was going to say vertical antennas, but that could be it too.
That's the M12 or M10, I think.
Maybe it's M3.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is. If we have time, it's a Baofeng. I'd go for the Quansheng because it's a fun platform for experimenting. But if that's going to be your only HT, my answer is going to be neither of those.
No,
don't
UV. Buy it for your main first HF rig. I mean, this has, I think, 40 dB spurious emission rejection on the first harmonic, and on the second harmonic it's worse. So it's good for playing around and soldering, or maybe putting it into the car for an emergency, but you don't want to have this as your main rig.
No,
I think.
and I mean the front end is wide open, so it gets desensitized by everything. So and by that I mean pretty much everything.
So yeah, and taking a look at this here, it's just much like the UV13. It's labeled ZM13 or the UV13. I think the difference is probably one has airband and one doesn't. Maybe there's some more differences, but I will say that if it's the only radio that you can afford, great. However, looking at the prices online, there probably are other radios in that price range. If your budget is say under $50 US, like
Yep.
you guys mentioned the UBK5, for example.
Or the TID radio TH3.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of those radios do pretty much the same. They're exactly just as bad, and they're fun toys.
And I mean, if you want to look at a little bit better of a radio, what is it? The not sponsored or anything like that too, but the Redifus RT85, right?
Yeah,
the
the 85 is actually a
RT85.
pretty
I think
decent
that's the
radio.
same as the Quangsheng, isn't it? It's almost identical.
No.
No, that's the little bit better Retivis radio.
But
the 85, I think.
The
I'll go with-
RT85 in the US would also. There's companies out there that I won't name their names, but they will rip it off and put their brand name on it. But it's not like the UVK5.
No.
Maybe
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
boring, but I, as my very first mobile handset in the year 2024, I would just get an Anytone. I mean, that's
But
somewhere in the middle between the ridiculous expensive Yaesu, Kenwood, ICOMs and the bottom feeder UVK5, Baofeng, Guangsheng, and how they all called.
But I see we have a topic for a whole nother show here.
Yeah.
Exactly,
what
yeah.
would be your first HD, and I think we got to
So
put that.
so
on the
far for a
schedule
detour. So
sometime
I'm
soon.
sorry. Let's get back on track. Chris, did you have a ham radio week, or are you working?
No, I'm between contracts. Well, apart from 1 day a week at the moment. So I realised I lost some content on my website, and yeah, it took a while to fix it, which was a bit annoying. So I'm not sure that was a highlight, but that was definitely a low light. And really just watching the bands disappear when the Aurora were coming up. That was quite cool, I thought, being into astronomy as well and that kind of stuff. It was it's sort of quite an interesting evening, that. So no real highlights. I've worked a bit of DX this week, but not too much on HF. So yeah.
Yeah, and we got your webpage up here if anyone wants to take a look at that. And we had a question here a little bit earlier, Chris. Jeff asks if you have a YouTube channel.
No. There is a reason. I'm useless. No, I think it's one of these things that I've been toying with the idea, particularly with the builds. So obviously, Ham Radio Dude, I think you've done quite a few of those over the years. I've seen one or two, and Morton, you was very brave doing a live build. But I think from an instructional point of view for some of the customers, I think that would be a good idea, particularly some of the really weird things that you tend to notice when you build things a lot, but you don't if you don't build things a lot, such as, is my soldering iron hot enough?
Yep.
Which enamel can you remove and which enamel you can't, things like that. So not yet. I think at the moment I've just tried to get a basic set of products up and running. It is a hobby job, so I'm working elsewhere, and then maybe I'll have a go. I kind of have a face for radio, so I think that is the other driver behind it as well.
Well, Chris, one thing I'll say to you too is it's really hard. I'm learning to be managing products and constant request, and then try to maintain a constant stream of videos on any products. If you get to that point.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's I wouldn't enter into anything without putting some thought into it, and I have put some thought into it, and I haven't entered into it yet. I'll watch you guys. I'll send you a kit. You can build the kit. It's fun watching somebody else build stuff, right?
I gotta say though, I'm never gonna build a kit of that scale live on YouTube again. Because the thing is though, my work surface is, I guess it's about 40 by 30 centimeters big, and trying to fit everything underneath the overhead camera and remembering to have everything in frame at the same time as you're gonna try to produce a live stream and actually build the kit, it's too much for me.
Particularly that kit, it's a bit fiddly. Some of it's a little bit fiddly.
Yep. But the kit works really good though, so I'm really happy about it. But I'm not going to build another one live on stream. I might film one, but not live.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Bob building his QMX Plus live on stream, right?
Yeah, I don't see that happening, but there might be a build video, but that's going to be time lapses.
Yep. Anything else this week, Chris?
No, No, it's fun to get on here though. I've never
Yeah.
done this before, so this is going to be fun.
It's hopefully we'll have a lot of viewers. I see we're having pretty good numbers already. So hopefully you'll get to tell a lot of people about your products there. Bob, how's your ham radio week been?
It's been quiet. I think we should mention, if the rules are the same as last week, that if you actually do put the magic keyword into the chat and want to win, you have to stick around till the end when we do the draw. If you're not around at the end and we draw your name, you lose it. Isn't that's still the rule? Yeah.
Yeah, that's still the rule.
right.
You got to be around and actually make yourself known in the chat after we've done the drawing.
Totally.
Yeah, so we should get into the habit of mentioning that when we announce.
We absolutely should. Not that we're probably going to have a lot of giveaways. It's just a coincidence that we're having giveaways twice in 2 weeks now.
Yep, that's true. For me, there's been very little radio. Morten and I did try a Parks in the Air activation on Friday, just as the sun set and the temperature plummeted. So when the bands weren't brilliant, we just decided that, we're not going to get any contacts, and packed up and went home. So that was 0 contacts. I think that's the first time I've had that happen. Other than that, I've made a couple of videos. One with the test kit that I used for that activation. And that is running the IC705 off a USB power bank. And I created a cable for that because the one I got, it didn't fit. And that seems to be working quite nicely. If you use the right power bank, you can easily run the 705 off a USB power bank. So that means it's one less thing for me to carry when I go to summits, and even more important, one less thing for me to carry across security checks at the airports, because that almost went south with my battery when I came home from Mallorca. And also, I've awarded my first seal of approval this week. There's a video if you're interested, and that was, of course, to Sean's fantastic Lil Dude 6 mast. That thing is for a 6-meter mast that you can put in your hand luggage. That thing is it's a beast. Really look.
Do you have a graphic of your seal of approval there, Bob?
I may. Let's see. That should be
because that is one of the greatest seals of approval I've ever seen.
That was pretty good.
Let's see if I can find it. That would be share screen, and yep, there we go. Let's see. That's the Lima Bravo 5, Juliet seal of approval. Cool. And there's stickers. Of course, there's stickers.
Yeah, that is actually great. I saw that mine mast after I picked it up at your place lacked the seal of approval. Actually,
I will send you some seals that you can put on it. And just before I show my last highlight from my week, is our next week's guest, are they confirmed?
Next week's guest is confirmed, and I guess you're just going to tell everyone who next week's guest is.
I'm going to show one of his products at least, because this is what I've been doing today. This is the egg beater. Well, you can't see the egg beater. The egg beater is inside the mast, but it's the egg beater, and I've created this this thing on top. My hope is to
the eggnogs. Actually, I think it's called.
They call the eggnogs, of course. They call the eggnogs. Yep. The thing on top is called the egg beater, and the eggnog is the matching and ballon that's inside the mast. Hopefully, there'll be a video of that as well. I had great fun building that thing when Mark of Halibut Electronics creates documentation. He does a really thorough job. There's actually the documentation on the PCB alone is sufficient to build this, but there's a 28-page PDF that you can download as well for how to put it together. So I had great fun building that. I haven't had time to test it yet. I'm hoping the SSTV experiment from the ISS is going to be running tomorrow as well. If it is, I'll try to connect it up and see if I can decode some images. If not, it's going to be I'm going to test it with the ISS APRS system.
Awesome.
So,
and next week's guest, in case you were wondering, is Mark Smith from Halibut Electronics and Ham Radio Workbench.
Yes.
and he's going to be joining us live from Pacificon. So if you happen to be at Pacificon, you can actually walk by the Helmet Electronics stand and probably happen to show up on stream here.
That would be cool, and not at all annoying for Mark. Anyway, good kit from our next week's guest there. I had fun putting together today. That was very little radio, but I probably took more than my fair share of the time anyway. So I'll leave it to you, Morten. What's your ham radio moment of the week?
My ham radio moment of the week started yesterday because a couple of weeks ago I set up my Ham Shack hotline phone again. And it's rung exactly one time before yesterday, and that was Jeff, who's in the chat here, that called me. And it was on Do Not Disturb. I was out with the family in Sweden yesterday, and an email dropped in with, "You have a voicemail message on Ham Shack hotline." And it turned out to be a ham from just across the Swedish border here that had set up his phone. Turned out that he was a new ham. He'd never done POTA before. And I'm going to find the right window to share it here. So I asked him and if he wanted to go out and do a POTA today. And he said, yeah. So I actually got to do some Elmering here. And I'm going to bring up some pictures here because I used the right kind of equipment doing this, to put it mildly. Let's see here. This is of course the mast strapped to a park bench, like every self-respecting ham does. Use the Little Dude 6. Amazing little mast there, Sean. It's just so light, so small, and yet so rigid. And I could have said this in a dad joke manner, but I tried not to. And of course, I used your kit here, Chris.
Good boy.
As the antenna. I really like this unfed half-wave kit. And a couple of guys over in the Discord was a little bit worried about how much the mast was bending. But what do you say, Sean? Is this too much?
No, I think that's about right.
Yep.
I mean, like, ideally, you don't want to put it as much, as little strain as possible on it. But I think that's fair. I've been putting that much strain on it. And it's bending in an equal manner, right? It's spreading out throughout multiple sections. And so I don't think that's a problem at all.
I've done worse than this on my DX Commander mast, and that has survived. So and I'm guessing carbon fiber is a little bit more rugged. It's
supposed to be more rigid. Of course, you have different diameters of the actual tubing and so forth. However, I mean, you could tell right there that your wires are plenty. It's far enough away from the carbon fiber running vertically. Not that it would have too much interaction anyway. But also, you could tell that your wires are nice and tight, right? And that's what matters. So, yeah.
It works fine. Worked really good. Got QSOs, 2 QSOs with North America, 1 New Brunswick and 1 New York State, which I was really happy with. And it was really fun to show a new ham what Parks on the Air was about. He didn't want to do any QSOs himself, but he took a lot of pictures, filmed a lot of the activation, and started thinking about what equipment he was going to bring for his first activation. So it's really fun when you get to Elmer some new guys that way. And I guess that's my ham radio moment of the week. Besides that, I got Papa X-Ray Zero Fox today by pure luck and a little bit of a tip on our Discord, hamshow.eu/Discord. They were calling on 12 meters with no pileup at all. So I got through on the second try, I think. And that's my ham radio moment of the week. So, Chris, how about you tell us a little bit about your ham story and what made you decide on making antennas?
Okay. Well, should we go for the ham story first? It's
absolutely.
Remarkably dull. Since I was about 3, I guess I've been a persistent listener to the radio, which I'm sure a lot of people have, by the way, become radio amateurs, but an awful lot of time. I don't know why. Quite often listen to radio rather than watching TV. I think a lot of us do that as well. But then, as it happens, I was watching the World War II film years and years ago, and my mum started telling me what the guys were actually saying on Morse code as opposed to what you thought they were saying in the film, which was quite funny. And then chatted to my mum and realised she was a Morse decoder during the war. And also, my grandfather, who I never met, was a G2 prior to the war and was quite active in radio. So it sort of sparked off a bit of an interest. I was gobsmacked my mum knew Morse code, honestly. And then really after that, became a CB radio enthusiast, which I guess a lot of people did in the 80s. Terribly dyslexic, have trouble putting two letters in front of each other. So going into AM radio on 2 meters wasn't appealing, nor was doing the CW exam. Really walked away from the hobby, just did some listening with some SDRs, and then started to work out how to receive better with loops and things like that, which was quite interesting. And then really realized that the license conditions had totally changed and was very accessible to everybody, including myself. So I took the 3 exams in a few months and become a full licensee. And that was the story, very brief story between becoming a licensee. And as far as the antennas, I kind of quite like operating out in the field. And what was quite apparent was I don't like going out with more than one cable or more than one wire. As soon as you start having to string up wires all over the place to running antenna, for example, Buddy Pole, brilliant antenna, love probably the best coils that are made, but by the time you take a pole to stand it on the pole and some support wires and everything else, it was getting a little bit too much. So did some reading, made an antenna. This is going back a few years now, probably about 7 years ago, which remarkably looks like a TAC-10, by the way, and started using that. So that was really the first thing. Sold some to the guys around the club, or helped them build them. And then the pandemic happened. So I was a very busy IT consultant in the travel industry, and every customer, one by one, basically either went out of business or just didn't want to talk to me for 2.5 years. So I had a bit of time on my hands. So I was sitting there, locked indoors, interesting radio, decided to play around with Fusion and also Easy EDA and things like that, and just started building out some antennas for myself to use portable. And then thought, well, I've sold a couple through eBay, so I'll put them onto a shop. And there was another radio amateur, M0VUE, which is Carl. He's not that active on YouTube anymore. I saw one of my antennas on one of his YouTube channels and said, "Oi, you're using one of my antennas. Do you want to try the next one?" Which he agreed to do. He did a review, and the next day I had about 12 orders for the antenna. And that's it, basically. And it is a hobby job, guys. It's not a career for me. I'm not. It isn't. The IT side is still my thing, but I think then the more you learn about, luckily I come from an e-commerce background as well, so I could set up the shop easily, do all the things like that quite easily. In terms of manufacturing, that's relatively simple with things like 3D printers and that kind of stuff. That's amazingly easy to do now. So it really started that way, Morten. And since then, there's been a little bit of growth over the past, I think it's 3 years now, something like that.
Yeah.
To where we get a handful of orders normally on a Saturday and Sunday, which I try to get out the door on Monday. And the original products were all end-fed half-waves, and that's changed slightly since then. So that was it, really. It wasn't, it wasn't a planned thing. I didn't wake up one morning and say, "Oh, I'm going to sell antennas to the world and make a fortune." It was more of a case of saying, "I'm bored senseless during the pandemic. I've got no work." Luckily, I could, kind of afford not to work for a couple of years, unlike a lot of people during the pandemic, and kind of make my way by doing that. The other skill I learned during the pandemic was plumbing, because the other people that were allowed to work outside at the early days of the pandemic were plumbers for emergencies. My friend's a plumber, so I ended up plumbing for 2 years.
Yep.
Well.
And I know it sounds a little bit like my ham story. I also have a travel industry background, and when March 2020 hit, I just saw the bottom of the books open up, and I realized that I'll be out of work in a week. And that made me become a ham. And then I came over your end-fed halfway kit on eBay, I think, one Saturday night. Might have involved some alcoholic beverages, and figured that looks like a Pectena. I'm gonna try that because that is really cheap, and I don't have anything to lose. And that's the antenna I showed earlier, and still one of my favorite antennas.
Yeah. Yeah, and that wasn't the first one. That was, I would say, it was at the end of a long and arduous development process. It wasn't. It's just I thought, oh, I'll stick it on a PCB rather than. And the interesting thing was, when I was trying to sell the 3D printed enclosures where people had to make them, fit them in a box and put the top on and make them tidy, that never sold because they get a little bit fiddly to make. Whereas when you put them on a PCB, or I think ham radio do's done, you got them on a flat. I don't know whether that what material you're using for that, but when you've got them on a flat former, it becomes a lot easier for the guys to make. Most of the components are waterproof anyway, so it's not a problem using it in the field. And the PCB kits, particularly the QRP one, the tiny one, they really started selling. You know, I think they're quite cheap. They're about £8, but it's £8 to £10, something like that. But it's a really good entry level for somebody to actually try something, because it's honestly one of the only things now we can do. I'm not going to build a transceiver, right? But I don't mind building antennas. It's a fun thing to do. You've done it, you've made it, you can test it, you learn a lot, and you kind of move on. And then what you tend to find as you go down that route, you kind of understand things about noise and emissions and things like that. So it gets a lot better. Yeah, that's the one you bought, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the one I bought, and that's the one I used today. And I mean, at the price you're selling them for, you can't really beat it. So
Yeah.
and I've been running that antenna for 2 or 3 years now, and it's still one of my favorite field antennas.
Yeah, and they work. I mean, that the idea behind those, particularly that core, and maybe if people want to ask questions about cores and things in the chat, different cores do different things, right, and work different ways. I think there's kind of a couple of standards in radio amateurs, but there's, I think, I'm just going to check on my screen actually. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different cores are using different antennas for different reasons.
Yeah,
And variances of them. It's not a case of one core does everything. You know, you get the classic. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's quite a chunky core that a lot of people use. It's going to do 300 watts, but it's definitely not the best core to use if you're doing CW, QRP, and you want to be as light as possible. So having antennas that are about 100 grams, 4 ounces or less, or 2 ounces or less is a big benefit if somebody's a CW QRPer, but you want that to be quite efficient and easy to use as well. So the products I've tried to develop are based on me being stuck up a hill around here, trying to work out what to do, and also getting fed up with carrying stuff as well. Whereas I think that's probably a partial separation between summits on the air and parks on the air. If I do a parks on the air activation, I take the truck, and I don't mind taking a big battery and a 12-foot mast. But if I'm walking up a hill, you know, I'm old enough for that to kill me, let alone carry equipment with me as well. So, yeah,
that is a very good point. And kit optimization for POTA versus SOTA is two completely different things.
Yeah,
we've discussed that on this show a lot of times. Sean, you got something there?
Yeah. So Chris was talking about the super large toroid versus what might be a QRP toroid, and as we're talking about.
I'm gonna see if I can enlarge you here, there, Sean.
Sorry, I'm trying to get out of the way here, but it's just not working. Anyway, here you go. You got your super large toroid capable of, like you said, maybe 300 watts, but then you got something like a QRP toroid, good for like 5 watts, maybe one good for 20 watts, and then we step up to the standard one you see in kits, and you could see that there's a huge difference in size, which also affects core saturation, but when you're hiking, sometimes, you know, ounces equal pounds, right?
Yeah, they can do. Definitely. And that's age related as well. So when I was a young, fit chap, I could carry 100 pound up the hill. It's different from now with dodgy knees.
Yeah, this time when I walk up the stairs, if I look at the stairs wrong, I'm hurting.
Yeah. So and on that subject, the other thing that is quite, I don't know whether any other radio amateur have noticed this, but that is actually a really great core, right? These ones, which is the same as picked up. In my opinion, that's the best 100-watt core. And I have not seen any other YouTuber on Radio M actually using that. Now, if you look, it's less than half the weight of this one, okay? Which again, if you're doing ounces, but that will truly manage 100-watt sideband. And you know, I tested this 25-watt data. It takes it all day. So there are other cores out there, and you can see the the form factor's very slightly different. They're all from Ferrite. They're off the shelf. Anybody can buy them. But that's my favourite 100-watt core. And it also makes really nice choke as well. That's what I run at home at the moment under test. And I quite often run 400-watt sideband, 100-watt data through that, and that's not a problem at all. So I think that the bit that there's always a people striving for different ways to wind them, different efficiencies and things like that. The density of the core is quite important against the amount of power that you put in there, plus the fact that hitting the Curie temperature, guys, isn't going to do it for me, because well before that you're going to create harmonics, which is breaking your license conditions. So there's things like that to consider. It's a little bit more complicated than let's just make an efficient core and drive it really hard. Or let's use Mix 52 because it will go hotter. If you get a Mix 52 core pack, very hot, like that, it will burn its way out of the box you put it in before you put it. So you get, like I said, these are the things you learn over the years. And the way that I've learned, unfortunately, is to do it the hard way, right? So
Yep.
it's called testing in the software world.
and that's the beauty of this hobby, though. We make stuff and we test it out, and sometimes we fail, but we come out of that with some insights on the other end, and make better products or operate better and all that. So experimenting is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of ham that buys kits because I don't want to fiddle around finding the right toroid or everything. I much rather prefer to buy a kit and build it, but still have all the parts sorted out for me.
Yeah, and I think that really is the second part. And I've left it in the other room actually, so I might have to do a break for 30 seconds. But if you're building a traditional NFED using one of these guys, and you and I know a lot of the guys probably listening to this have done this, you try to mount them in the box, you try to put the capacitor onto the enameled wire. Some people burn their fingers, I've done it before, and then you're trying to put it into an SO239 and everything else. It can be a little bit of a pain to do. So when I tried to make the kit, so I must apologize for this, Morten, because I know live streaming the kit is not that easy to do, but I just tend to make sure that it's blatantly obvious where the things go on the boards.
So you let me enlarge you again here.
Yeah, and also make sure that, sorry, my lighting's terrible in here, but also make sure that there's holes to put wires through and things like that. So it's kind of relatively obvious on this board where it goes. And then what it gives you the opportunity to do is to actually make a kit that hopefully looks semi-professional. That was one that I built this week for a 9-to-1 kit, which I've sold a few of. I just never put it on the website until earlier in the week. And you'll see again, slightly different cores. That's a typical 43 core for a choke. Also, no, it's 31, sorry.
Yep.
And that's that way. So it's difficult seeing things backwards is a T200-2 for a random wire. Now, again, I don't want to get religious. Other people are going to write on there, oh, you should be using a 43 mix because you get a flatter SWR curve, but you go test these things and see what happens. It's really important.
My experience tells me that any antenna will do in the right conditions, though, and especially I know that what you were showing there is not a field antenna, but in the field, I usually prefer convenience over efficiency.
100%. Yeah, 100. Well, yeah, literally, because the core that's in the kit is not the most efficient core for 100 watts at all. It's kind of somewhere between 80%, 70% efficient, but it's quite forgiving when you tune it, and it's very light and it's easy to build. So a T1 4043 has a place in the world because it is a really good core for people to use when they're starting out. It's big enough to be able to put wire through, which is quite important. These things are a pain sometimes to put wire through. So it's a very easy thing to build, and it's gratifying that you can build it and tune it and you can see the harmonics and it works. That's the purpose of trying to do this. So I think if I sold kits that were super difficult, it kind of puts people off. But if it's something that's only got, 5 components, a few screws, we've thought about the lengths of the screws and things like that, it just makes it a little bit easier for people, that's all.
Absolutely.
And also less headache after market when people send you emails about which way around do I wire this, or how do I get the NML off, or things like that?
So a quick story about this. I had a client of mine at the local radio club, and he said, I've got an amazing SWR on this antenna. He said, I haven't trimmed it. I've folded the end over. And I said, well, how have you done that then? And he got he explained it to me. The toroid was in the middle of the PCB. Oh, a cat. The toroid's in the middle of the PCB, and he'd wrap the antenna wire around the toroid to tune it. And he went, I'm getting some fantastic results. So I was like, what? No, other end. So shorten the other end. Don't wrap it round. Oh, no. I didn't realise it's a pet show. I'd get the Delta Oscar Golfs in here as well.
It happens sometimes that the cats show up on stream. I have my shack, my studio, whatever you want to call it. The rest of the family calls it the hallway. Because I got a bedroom there and 2 bedrooms over there. So it tends to be a little bit of traffic in the background here.
I just wanted to, if this isn't too much for pain for a couple of minutes, I did actually take I rushed out to the shack just before this show actually, and took a couple of pictures of some of the toroids, really just in sequence, just so that people can see what they kind of look like. And I think it's kind of important because when you talk about stacking, again, it's not simple as saying, I'll just stack 2 or 3 cores. It's going to give me 2 or 3 the amount of power and things like that. We'll talk about that in a sec. But it's really just to give an idea of what some of these things look like, because they're all multi-purpose. All of the cores are multi-purpose and have different reasons. But if you haven't done it yet, look at Fairright's video about the best cores to use for ham radio, which was this week. They released it, and even they said we can't give a straight answer, which was fascinating, seeing that they're the manufacturers. But yeah, so how do I do this? It's going to just be a present. Yeah,
present and then share screen.
Yeah, okay, good old normal day-to-day stuff. Then nothing too complicated with this one. Just bear with me a sec.
Yep.
While you look, I can just comment and said for Jeff's comment here that we have the same problem in IT where I work. Whenever we make something idiot-proof, the universe creates a better idiot.
Tell me about it.
And while you're looking for your pictures, Chris, I'm gonna see where we are on the giveaway today and just share that quickly. Let's see. You can. Let's see if we can actually manage to share the right window here now. We are at 24 contestants at the moment, and if you want to have a chance of winning the kit, you can just enter hashtag radio stuff in the chat. We'll do the drawing at the end of the show, and you need to be present when we draw it. That'll be in approximately 10 minutes time.
Yeah. So can you see that? Okay, I've done share screen and
I'm gonna add it up here.
Yeah. Okay. So again, just left to right, no particular order. So this one's what the guys is a what they call a T5043 is a typical number, and as you can see, as you go up, they get slightly bigger. So this is the one that Ham Radio Dude held up. That's your 2.4 inch 43, and that's a 2.9 inch 43. So with NFEDs, if you're going to do something that's going to handle a bit of power on the low bands, top bands 80 meter, 40 meters, these stack quite nicely. If I was to use a 52 mix, 352s or something, it wouldn't work on top band. Okay, so it's kind of quite important. And going back to the thing about the kits, that's one made with the PCB. You can see that's one made without a PCB. Right, so these are actually quite simple. Just to make your kit up, screw it in, do a couple of connections, and you're done. Basically, you're not fiddling around with trying to secure the toroid to the case or anything like that. And I think most people that manufacture these things use similar stainless steel components. So that's as I said, that there are some kind of slight differences in these things and the way that they work. But I'm more than happy, if people chuck questions up their arse, particularly if they want to talk about efficiency, because that seems to be highly overrated. Any antenna that you're on the air with and is working is a good antenna, right? It doesn't matter what it is.
It's always a compromise, though. Depending on first of all what you can get in the air where you are. You might have some HOA restrictions that force you to do Halloween decorations. You might be be at a park where you don't have a lot of room to put something up, and you might have a significant other that restricts you from having that tower of your dreams up beside your house. So it's always a compromise, no matter what you do. But the thing is, though, to know what you're doing, so you know the limitations of your equipment, and you're able to work around it.
Yeah.
And when I'm running a 40-meter ham stick on top of my car, I know that that's not the most efficient antenna in the world, but it lets me get on 40 meters stationary mobile, and with as little hassle as possible.
But I have to say, I think it's a bit of a cop out as well to say that any antenna that you get in the air and you gets you contact is good enough. I think it's fun to try and improve on antennas, and there's this cheap, quick, or I can't remember the third one, but if you spend the time, you can create antennas that has all these properties that you talk about. And are also great antennas, and that at least for me, I really enjoy building antennas, and I also enjoy drawing them on the computer and simulating them. And for me, to iterate and to try to find a really efficient antenna that also ticks all the other boxes, I think that's a very, very worthwhile challenge.
Yeah, I agree. And the kit that Morton built on the live stream. So I shouldn't smile, but I did watch that. It was good fun to watch. I had that over there in the football was on. I remember it. But
I'll see if I can find that kit while you talk here.
There's two kind of critical bits about that. One of them is if the windings are not, they don't need to be super tight, right? But they need to be kind of neat and relatively tight. That does have a bit of an impact on that antenna. But the other thing is it's the old gag, the more efficient an antenna is, the higher Q it has, even though it's a broadband transformer at resonance. And I know myself and Morton had to exchange emails a bit later as to how do you actually tune this antenna, because I love adverts where they say it's end-fed halfway for a kilowatt and it's 1-to-1 SWR on all bands. Nah. That's anybody who's built in that. No, that's just a no. But that people buy antennas on that basis. So good luck. It's one of these things where you go do it. But I know the guys here, generally speaking, have done their research and understand that it's like anything is a compromise, and you cannot have, in my experience anyway, an antenna that matches every band, that has omnidirectional. Do you see what I mean? It's all the things that you want. So I've actually got 3 antennas in the garden. I've got a 10-meter antenna that's dedicated, a 40-meter to 10-meter end-fed half wave, and that's perfectly resonant, the lower end of 40 meters. And I've pulled the harmonics down so they're in the usable place that I want to use them. And it works really super, and it's running 400 watts SSB, 100 watts data, good antenna. I always get asked, what do we do with a kilowatt? And to be honest with you, I've got a kilowatt amp. I can build a kilowatt transformer, but everything then gets slightly more tricky, such as your coax, such as, you're going to be putting some form of heat in there, and then you always get the challenge where it says all you need to do is stick up a G5 IV and that will be great. Well, it wasn't designed for all the bands, and also you do generate heat through any electrical component where you've got waste. So there's compromises around all of this stuff. As you said, it's just quite interesting. Going back to my original comment, the big thing for me when I was going portable is it needs to be repeatable. I do not want to take an antenna analyzer with me. Okay, I want to take one antenna, one piece of coax, one transceiver. That's it. I don't want to be antenna analyzing. And when I used the buddy pole, that was what I needed to do. And with and I've got one because I operate down the beach, a vertical. I have to take my antenna analyzer with me because I'm not using ATU because I want it to be at resonant if I can. So, and that's personal preference, right? Other people will say a non-resonant antenna is amazing. It's fine, if it works, which is why we've got non-resonant kits, because that does genuinely work in certain circumstances where I haven't got a tree to chuck something up or a long enough pole with me. I can just put up a M0VUE that's not resonant, chuck out a few radios and work it from the beach. It does work for me at that point.
So, and the point though, you're speaking about the buddy stick, or you're speaking about the buddy pole, the vertical or the dipole there, Chris?
I've got both. I typically use the vertical, and if you use either way, they're a dipole. Yeah. So they're
Yeah,
just a loaded.
yeah,
One's a loaded dipole, the other one's vertical with a piece
Yep.
of wire that's not a ground radial. So they're kind of a little bit almost like an off-center fed dipole. But they are great antennas. But I think when I bought mine, the kit was about $400, something like that. And then I bought the low band coil for it. It started adding up.
Yeah, I had one of the buddy sticks, and everyone was talking about how great they were. I was never able to tune that properly and repeat it. It was always a struggle to tune it, so I ended up selling mine.
Yeah,
I had the same with one of those small Outback antennas, Outback 2000, I think it is.
Outbackers. Yeah.
Yeah. I have one QSO on it, one single QSO, and that's it. And other than that, I didn't manage to tune it. But
Yeah,
and that's why wire antennas are
they're
amazing.
much better.
from that kind
And if you talk about your 40-meter ham stick, the efficiency on that's probably going to be about 5%.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're seriously talking about losing a lot of power. And I think as I said, I think Bob, from my personal point of view, when I operate from home, I don't tend to take much compromise on the antenna. I want it to work as best as I can make it work with my surroundings. Not, again, if there's always that entry into the hobby or people who, really do focus on their transceiver. I mean, I'm amazed at anybody who spends so much time working with the kit, because I just turn mine on selector mode and talk. But a lot of people are really into their hardware, right? So it's a different aspect of the hobby. I know people that only want to do rag chews on nets. I know people that only contest and things like that. And I think antennas is a little bit like that. There's different ways of using antennas, the same way there's different ways of using the transceivers as well. And some people just happen to like, I happen to like full wave loops, but I can't put up an 80 meter full wave loop in my garden, unfortunately, because that would be a quite nice antenna to use on 80 meters. I can't. So I end up using an end-fed half wave for 80. And the reason why I'm using end-fed is because I don't have things dangling down the garden. That's the main reason for using it.
Yeah, and I think that's the main reason for using an end-fed for a lot of people. It's the ease of deployment.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
really
a steroid.
a lifesaver if you're living in a TEHRS house or so. Then you have no other choice, right? Because you have usually your check either in the cellar or on the top floor. And where do you hang a dipole? Yeah, in a TEHRS house, you don't.
Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah.
I have that with my 80 meter antenna, which is a Wyndham antenna, and that's basically because having an off-center fed one allows me to have the feed point at a place where it's convenient for the coax to come down.
Yeah.
If it was a center fed one, the coax would come down right outside my front door, and I am thinking that the rest of the family would not be too happy about that.
Yeah. Well, the trick to that one is you own one house and your partner own the other, and then you can do what you want.
Is that how a divorce works, Chris?
No, I've tried that before. No, I'm talking about new partner. She's also licensed as well, so it's quite nice because I don't kind of get that view. She's also
the weird
licensed,
looks, right? You don't get those.
But, you mentioned earlier, Chris, about roughly 5% efficiency for that vertical antenna. For end-fed halfway, what roughly ballpark is the efficiency for that for like a QRP1?
I've not managed to. If it's end-fed, well, I'll give you an example. I've converted a CB stick. Okay, so I put the transformer on the bottom one of mine, not the simple matching. Now I know the transformer is about 90%, just over 90% with one of those. Now, if you're going to do that and it's going to be monoband, don't use one of these. You're building LC circuit, so you're going to get about 96, 97% when you're at resonance. So X being 0, yeah, and that is absolutely. From a monoband, 10-meter monoband point of view, I do use that. So I've chatted to Market Reef the other day on sideband, those kind of things, using that antenna. Where these guys are quite handy is when you can, do a quick, sort of 40, 20, 15, 10 flip at resonance. You are going to lose a bit of power. Yeah, you'll lose 10%. You won't lose a bit out of the antenna system, but compared to setting up, say, a quarter wave vertical, you're going to be laying out a ton of radials to get anywhere near that efficiency. And I think, people forget that you got your vertical, you got so much ground losses until you put down a ground plane that chucking out full radials, it'll get you on the air. It won't particularly make it massively efficient. And I think they quote gain figures above what? This is a problem, isn't it? If you've got 100 watts going, you're losing 10%, but on a quarter wave vertical, if your ground plane is rubbish, you're losing 50% at least before you start. So again, that's one of the reasons why not necessarily broadband, but monoband. When I use the verticals, quarter wave verticals or random, I use them at the seaside. So I tend to chuck a wire out because it's a good ground plane, which is quite good. But 5% versus, maybe 70, 80% is a big number.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But the other thing for 10 meters mobile, I use a CB antenna, which have got really nice big coils at the bottom, which I trim down to 10 meters, and they work much better than ham sticks. Or seem to, anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. I see we're getting towards where we need to do the drawing, so I'm gonna put the screen up here. And thank you once again, Chris, for actually offering to give away one of your antennas here. Let's see if I can find the right window here, though. I have so many windows open. So let's see. Here we are. Hashtag radio stuff. If you haven't put that in the chat. And we'll do the drawing in, I think, let's say about a minute. And you need to be present in the chat to be able to win. If you're not present in the chat, we'll do another drawing.
As we found out last week.
Yep.
Oh, really?
So before we do the drawing, I'd like to bring this back to your ham radio moment, Morten, and the new ham. As Chris is selling antennas, and we talked about a new ham that needed to get an antenna for portable work. Maybe Chris could recommend something really simple but fairly well working. From his selection of antennas, and we could
How much power?
100 watts.
100 watts is probably a good starting point there.
Yeah, if it's 100 watts voice, then it would be the same one if he wants to make it that we're giving away today. I do make one that's fully built in the case, and that's if somebody doesn't want to make one, but there's obviously it costs a little bit more because I make that myself. That's a 3D printed case. Okay.
I'm thinking I showed him your kit today, and he was actually real impressed with that. So you might get an order from him sometime soon, I would guess.
Yeah, that would be cool. And the funny thing is, it's the Norwegian import taxes are probably going to cost him more than the kit.
But he's in Sweden though, so
I
don't
know.
know.
It's fine.
So you're just setting him up to order to him, Morten, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because if you, again, it's one of these things that I think people who launch their shops realize quite quickly. If you sell through eBay, for example, which is a great shop front to sell through, you end up selling it. It costs much more money than if you buy directly through the people's shop. And also, if you're like I'm VAT registered, you don't get charged VAT if you export it out of the UK. You only pay import duty, and if the US, you're allowed to buy something like nearly $200 worth of goods. We're paying no tax. So the guys out there need to shop around a little bit where they're buying things as well, because what looks like a good deal sometimes isn't a good deal.
Yeah, buying stuff from the US for us Norwegians is that is almost impossible due to shipping costs, basically.
Yeah. Whereas it's not too bad from the UK. I think it was about £12, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think UK isn't too bad though on shipping, but having stuff from the US is really, really expensive. But we have 30 entries in the drawing, and let's go ahead and see who wins the kit.
Oh.
Good luck.
And I see that you're in the drawing as well.
Well, yeah, I was in the drawing because I was telling people how to properly put in the. That is a misconception with StreamYard.
And Joachim, I gotta ask you something though. You already have one of these kits. Would you like to ham it forward, or would you like another one?
I'll get a different one.
So we actually used Joachim's kit for Field Day this year.
Okay.
He says to ham it forward. So let's do another drawing and see who actually wins it.
Very good. Very good. Come on, ham radio. The day it happened. So, hey, there you go.
Hey,
Okay,
ham radio
AIJ.
passion, Øystein.
LBAIJ.
Excellent. And he's got a great YouTube channel showing off that you don't have to be good at CW to do it, except he's actually getting pretty good.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll burn his fingers with a kit and it will slow him down. Yeah.
Congratulations. I'll make sure to forward his address information to you, Chris.
Yeah, I'll ship it Monday or Tuesday. So
Yep.
it should be with you this week. Well, no, it'll be in Norway this week. Sorry.
Yeah. So let's see. Øystein, just send me an email and I'll forward your address information there. Congratulations. And it's always fun to give stuff away.
Hang on a second. He has to write a message in the chat. Yeah, let's be. I'm the German who insists on following the rules, right?
Yeah. Yes,
you already did.
And shit.
He did. Okay, very good.
Since your CW skills are improving, what's he writing there?
I think that's Tango Uniform. Thank you, or something like that.
That is probably correct. I would guess that from what I can. I don't actually know at all, but
either that or something else. No, it's not that.
So no cat this time. Cat's gone.
Yeah,
cat's gone.
Yeah.
Let's see here, and there's the link to his YouTube channel. And James asks, "What's the kit that's been given?" I'll find it and put it back on screen here. So, and I can tell you this much: it will not break your bank if you're going to buy it yourself, though. So let's put it up on screen. And I also got to say there, Chris, thank you for the support you have given my channel over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no problem at all. And just a sneak peek before we go, QRO kit.
That's I'm just going to show off the kit you gave away, and you can see it here. Find it over at radiostuff.com if you want to buy one of those. And
he said thanks. Wait, it. X marks the spot.
Close enough, right?
Let's I'm begging you there, Chris, so you can show the
yeah, I'd said it's just got to go. It's got to be beaten to death with Millennia this week, but the QRO kit will be out. This is big. The thing weighs about 1 kilo when it's built, probably just under 1 kilo, but that's just needs building out. And the biggest issue with this one is going to be cooling, and also I've had to change from tracks to pads, make sure the pads will handle the amount of power plus the capacitors. I've had to change the type of capacitor in there as well. So it'll be released soon. Once I've killed one, I need to kill it first.
Yeah. Since we're talking, I always have to nerd out with something towards the end. What voltage level capacitors do you need for a kilowatt?
What is level for a
voltage? What voltage of the voltage rating on the capacitors when you?
Well, the capacitor doesn't actually need to be that high. I mean, here we go. So you'll see that people keep adding bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger ones, not capacitors and everything else. You can blow a capacitor.
They don't know what they're doing, I think.
Yeah, if you do not tune your antenna properly, you start stuffing current through it, and that's when it's going to blow up. A 3 kilovolt capacitor will work fine with 1 kilowatt. If your antenna's not tuned, you will blow it up. Irrespective of whether it's a TDK one, a Chinese one, they tend to fail a bit earlier. They come up a bit short. Oh, sorry, Chinese joke. These ones are going to use Mura ones. So I found some 3 kV Mura capacitor, silver Metallica ones, which are not cheap, but they are very, very good. So, but like I said, what I need to do is put it on the linear, put 1 kilowatt through there, and then I'm going to, sorry QRP guys, then I'm going to stuff 200 watts of data through it for a few hours, see what happens. Oh, by the way, if I do put 200 watts through FT8, the world lights up. It's hilarious watching it.
Chris is asking how much shipping to the US is for your kits.
It prices it on the checkout, but I think it's about $15 for track delivery. It calculates it on the shop, but if you just bear with me, because the shop itself does weight-based shipping, eBay is, I don't know where they get their shipping rates from, because you pay commission on eBay shipping, if nobody knows. But let me just check. Hang on. I think it's going to be $15, for example, something like that. Anyway, it's not it's not a deal breaker. Yeah,
it's still a relatively cheap antenna for that price though.
There are other PCB based products out there that are 10 times the cost.
Yep. So and I got to say the quality of your products. I got 2 of your antennas now, and I got the radial disc for the quarter wave verticals, and the quality is really good on everything.
I was thinking of you when I did a revision of that, because originally I used wing nuts and then realised your hands get cold in Norway.
Yeah. So mine's got banana plugs.
Banana plugs.
That's
they work with gloves. Wing nuts don't work with gloves, right? So that's what I mean.
Yeah, and when I went out testing it, I used really thick wire, but now I got a roll of apparently transparent wire here. So I'm gonna try to rebuild those radials and try it again.
Perhaps that's one of the most interesting things about building stuff and like coming out with different products and design is you think for days and days and days upon like how you could make it so it's perfect, and you think it's perfect, and then you get it in somebody else's hands who has a different point of view. And or different location, like you mentioned, and it just it kind of opens your eyes a little bit to have to adapt to that as well, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, and you get cool feedback from some clients. I mean, I think feedback, whether it's positive or negative, good. Sometimes it can be brutal, right? I run over my antenna with my car, it broke. I remember that one. And he said, have you got any tips? Yeah, don't run over the antenna with your car. It's probably the best way. But the parts were salvageable inside the 3D printed case. So I just sent the guy a new case, right? It's no big deal. But it was good feedback. So then what I did is I shortened the legs and thickened the walls.
Yep.
And when I sent one back, I said, can you run that one over? And he was on soft ground. It survived. Now, I wouldn't recommend that because, it is what it is. But but some of the feedback, I've had some really great feedback this week from a chap on the 9-to-1 kit where he'd used them before, and because it's got the choke built in, and he said, has the choke got enough impedance? I went, well, put it up there without a counterpoise and see. It just didn't work. And I think, Morton, you would have seen that with the kit with the choke put in.
Yep.
Unless you got a counterpoise, it does not work. I don't care what it finishes the discussion about counterpoises, right?
Well, you need a counterpoise of some kind, whether it's your coax or a counterpoise and an end-fed half wave.
Yeah.
And in the field, I tend to use the coax, but I always use a choke on it after after a given length.
Yeah. See, I never have enough coax anymore to be able to use my coax as a counterpoise, so I have to have a counterpoise with me.
Yeah. There's ways around it that are relatively easy. But the other thing I see a lot, and I see this all the time on YouTube, is people measuring the SWR of an end-fed half wave at the end of the coax. So unless they've nulled out their coax from the circuit, you're not actually measuring your SWR. You're measuring your SWR of your antenna plus the coax.
Yeah,
and anything else in between. So that's another one. So they're pretty good. You can make them better. You just need to think about what you're doing. But generally speaking, if you got something it's tuned and it looks relatively good, even with something like an end-fed or, as you know, with a dipole, they're going to be a good antenna, right? They're going to work. I think some of the other ones are a little bit more tricky to get right.
I see we get a question here from Chris, and I guess this is to you there, Sean, with your ground spikes for your mass there. What he recommends to pound the spike in the ground, and I think K8MRD showed that you shouldn't use a hammer to hammer it into the ground at least.
So I'm reevaluating that one because with K8MRD's prototype, I would just use a hammer on the top of the aluminum ground spike or aluminium ground spike. But like with K8MRD's ground spike, what had happened is as you go to screw it into the bottom of the cap, there was a gap about that far where the aluminium spike didn't screw all the way into the PVC part that I had built. And I suspect that kind of created some issues with stability, and therefore when he hit it down, all the pressure went on the threads. I went ahead and I built him a new one where the ground spike actually goes Yeah, all the way in. Sorry, I have so much stuff here. I'm like looking around for it. But the ground spike actually goes all the way in. If you want to avoid any of that, though, yeah, just a rubber mallet and tap on the top of the aluminum spike.
Yep.
I think that might be your best bet.
Yeah.
One of the things.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry, real quick. One of the things I would mention, though, is it's hard to tell you because there's so many different environmental variables, such as the desert ground is very hard, whereas I'm at is very soft. Sorry, go ahead.
But the point is, though, always use something that's softer than what you're trying to pound if you don't want to destroy what you're pounding. So, and this comes from my stage experience when pounding aluminum truss together. We use a copper hammer.
Yeah.
So use a copper hammer or a rubber mallet, but don't use a steel hammer for an aluminum spike. That just won't work.
Yeah, or just put a nut on the end.
Yeah.
And again, it's what you do when you bash ground rods in. You don't hit the thread. You have a nut on top. You hit the nut.
Yep.
You take the nut off.
Interesting. I want to have to play with that.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you've then got to tend a nut with your ground spike, but that's that's another thing. Yeah.
And I don't want to be the party pooper here, but we're 10 minutes over the hour now. So this has been a great stream, and thank you once again for being on, Chris. And
no, anytime.
You're welcome back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome back anytime. And for the other guys here next week, Mark Smith from Halbert Electronics is going to talk about at least the eggnogs, and knowing Mark right, he's probably going to talk about his other products as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. See you guys next week. 7-3.
73s.
7-3.
Sounds great.
Bye bye.
Bye.